Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today. Maybe when you put in your chat, if you can put your city or your country, would be great, so we can see, where is everybody. And welcome and thank you, my dear friend and colleague Marcelo, for accepting our invitation to be our speaker in this special activity of Initiative Toronto that we are so proud to have as part of the preparation for our next NLS Congress 2021, Bodily Effects of Language. It is planned to be on Saturday, May 22 and Sunday, May 23 in Ghent, and Marcelo's work is perfectly aligned with it. The body as separated pieces and the unit beyond the phallus. Before presenting Marcelo, just to remember that the question can be done on the chat or raising your hand when we will open the floor to questions. And please maintain the microphones off. Marcelo Veras is a psychiatrist at the Federal University of Bahia. He's analyst member of the school AMS of the World Association of Psychoanalysis, the WAP, and the Escola Brazilera de Psicanálise, EBP. Also, he's responsible for the WAP blog. He holds a master's in psychoanalysis from Paris 8 and PhD in psychology from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Marcelo is the former director of the Escola Brazilera de Psychoanalysis, former director of the Juliano Moreira Psychiatric Hospital, the largest in northeastern Brazil, and the author of The Madness Among Us and Selfie. Therefore, I am. And here I have the copy of his book in Portuguese. That's so kind you gave it to me. And, I have it all.
I have other editions.
I read it in Portuguese.
But I think that it's more beautiful, this edition. The first edition.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm very proud to have it. And all is, with my notes. So thank you for being here, dear Marcelo. Yeah, we're blessed to have you here. So I will then, let me see if I can do co-host because I have is make co-host, but it's okay. So we're recording, so welcome, and you have the floor, Marcelo.
Okay.
I made you the host, yeah.
So, hi, friends. I think it's amazing because I'm seeing here that we have people from UK, Bulgaria, Guatemala, Iran, Belgium. So I think that...
Grecia, Marina, we have Grecia too.
Greece. Yes, it's amazing, this Athens, Greece. So it's wonderful to talk to people from all the world. I think that this is good to us to have the virtual world. I think that also I have talked about the problems with the virtual world, but I think that we have also amazing meetings like this. So thank you very much for the invitation. And I think that what I'm trying to do is spend a good moment with you, sharing a little bit my experience as psychoanalyst, as a psychiatrist, and as a former director of a psychiatric hospital for 7 years. So my first book, Madness Among Us, is unfortunately we can pass in Portuguese a loucura entre nós. The word us and the word not Lacan's not is the same word in Portuguese. So it's madness among us and madness among nots in English. Unfortunately, we don't have the same word as in Portuguese. So, but as a matter of fact, I will talk about nuts and nuts, and also about us, because I think that madness, in the last teaching of Lacan's, madness is among us also. We all share some kind of madness, and that's what I'm thinking to talk to you now. Let's see a little bit. As I have time, a little time, I thought that it could be amazing to do anything a little bit different. The invitation extended by my friend Ines provoked me. And my first title, she knows, for this conference would be Lacan with Frankenstein. Because I'm talking about body and pieces. So it was actually my first thought, not merely a comic title, but the human epic in understanding what a human body is. That is, a body that is already born denaturalized by the encounter with language. This, I think, that is the most important. And I have decided to give this lecture in a less usual way, that is to take advantage of the time I have with you to make a very detailed analysis of just one clinical case. So I will talk about a single clinical case, but it
what a human
body
is.
That
is a body that is.
let me, yes, put the song, okay. So I'll talk about just one single case, but it serves to elucidate several clinical questions regarding the human body in my practice as a psychoanalyst. I propose to tell Anna's case, and I will tell you in 4 moments, not chronological, that obey a logic that has been configured in the course of an observation that extends over more than 20 years. Anna had always stood out as a beautiful and cultivated woman who does not go unnoticed in the environments where she was. Very beautiful woman. Even in my office, when she appears, everybody looks to her. Her connection to the world, however, has never focused easily on human relationships. The presence of the other, the gaze of the other, was most of the time uncomfortable and stalker to her. It was through culture and arts that she was able to experience life and was able to inscribe herself in the world within social bond. During all these years, paradoxically, the leitmotif of the sessions was the incessant search for a place in the world where she could not feel excluded from the view of the big other. I anticipate to you that the construction of this case is only possible if we go beyond the phallus. That is why I choose it. The mediation of the phallus was not enough to adjust her relationship with the other. It was then necessary an invention. And that's what we try to do in all these years, an invention. So I split this text in four parts. First moment, I call this the discrete jouissance of the gaze of the other. The discrete jouissance of the gaze of the other. In the last years of her life, Anna visited the Analyst, me, sparsely but regularly. On average, 2 to 3 times a month, sometimes 2 months with no notice. But the spacing between sessions should not be seen as weakening of the transference. On the contrary, Anna has found in the analysis, according to her, the only solid point on which she could lean, which indicates that the transfers would probably tend to last until infinity, if it's the only point that she could have. And it was like this until her death some years ago. Anna passed away some years ago. If we think about the ideals of mental health, for example, it is possible to conclude that good advances have been made. After years of restlessness, she found herself free of hospitals, hallucinatory crises, and social isolation. She found a stable relationship that lasted almost a decade and got some regular jobs, including in her field of interest, the arts. She was passionate for arts. Together with her last partner, she also fulfilled her dream of seeing the world. She traveled a lot with him. And this is very interesting. Seeing the world, to see the world. It's a kind of treatment of the gaze of the other. Now, she was able with this partner to see the world. And this is, it was very interesting. The job and the partner, although not coincidentally living in separate houses, finally allowed her autonomy and a separation from her large family, a very traditional family here in Bahia, Brazil. This separation has improved family relationships considerably. It was very good, the separation from her family. The relationships get better. A comment made by Anna defines not only her family, but in general, the way she prefers to be in the world. She used to say, family, everybody says this, but Anna, when she says this, is very different. Family is good to see in pictures, but everyday life is complicated. This phrase that many people have said is in this case a necessary condition. The word of contemplation is much better than the word of intersubjectivity. Her comfort zone was to be framed in a photograph. Not by chance, she had a long relationship with a photographer, for example, one of the relationships that she had in her life. In the analysis with me, a constant complaint was the difficulty in relating to co-workers. It was very difficult to her to bear going to the working there. It was nothing very explicit, no major persecutory delirium, for example, but there wasn't a session without a long explanation about her colleagues, pity complaints against her. Each gesture or comment by her colleagues could be believed as a proof that they were persecuting her and affirming her incompetence. It was rarely up to the analyst to do more than acknowledge the receipt of this indignation and at times try to dissuade her from taking more abrupt actions in response. It was difficult to manage this. Nevertheless, what sustained her for a long time in a steady job was the possibility of moving directly into the art world. It was a job that she could see art. This is what allowed her to endure the daily work routine without explicitly fighting, for example. The others look, however, was always present in her daily life. Each moment of the team could be interpreted as a segregation. Sometimes the segregation took such radical aspects that the thought of completing the suicide she had attempted at the age of 20 could happen. This is a point that you need to fix this. Remember this dramatic part on the rare occasions when she asked for an appointment outside the scheduled day. Rarely, it was necessary to attend her immediately, even if only by phone, often just to reassure her that she could endure the difficulties and that she could count on the analyst. This is what transference is, being the other side of the phone sometimes. Eric Laurence loves to say this, that sometimes in psychosis, transference is being the other side of the phone. It's very important. Even so, death was a theme that always returned and occupied a very particular place in the organization of her delusional system. One time, a possibility opened up to modulate the interest in death. It was a long and detailed study of a famous work of art, Rodin's Gates of Hell, whose characteristic that caught her attention, was not exactly the central image, but the exuberance of the frame. We will see how this displacement from the work of art to its surrounding was crucial in stabilizing her psychosis. And I try to show you, first of all, this masterpiece of Rodin's. Let me show you here. Wait a minute, please. I will put here where it is here. Okay, is this? But I need to share with you first. I need to put this here. Okay. You see, this is Rodin's gate. And what is important here is that we have the frame with all the big masterpieces of Rodin. We have, you see, the three myths, we have the thinker here. But if you see the door, the inner side of the window side is hell, is death here, as you can see, not like the frame. So this is very important to show that what interested her is that if sometimes the art is awful, is hell, we can bear this with the frame. This is a point that I invite you to keep in mind, because it's very important to see what will happen before or after this. Now, I would like to share with you the second moment, the second part of this case, art and stabilization. I think that this is very important. The function of art in her stabilization. In fact, by the time I started treating Anna, her clinical condition did not demonstrate the turmoil of her years in psychiatry hospitalization. And I hardly used to talk about this period, but describe this as a hell of consultations and admissions in psychiatry hospitals. Her story apparently begins with her encounter with sex in her late teens. At 17, she was seduced by an older woman, a participant in her father's social universe, with whom she launches herself in a forbidden passion. And she remembers well that on the day her father surprised her about the relationship, and he gave her a slap in the face that was forever marked in her memory. And this is important to report, because in all these years, this is the only scene in which I could hear her body present in her speech, her own body presents in the speech. This is, I think, that it's very important in this case. After this episode of the slap, the father, this forbidden relationship, to Anna, Anna in her 20s, 17, 18, 19, the world became bizarre. But it was the 70s. And the young Anna was mixed up with the hippies of the time. She knew Caetano Veloso, Maria Bethânia, because Bahia was the next of the 70, the music of the 70s, the famous Brazilian music starts here in Bahia, and Anna was mixed with all these people there. Thus, her strangeness in front of the world was not so different from the psychedelic world in which she lived. Lots of mushrooms, drugs, like everybody in the 70s. And many did not realize that his madness was of a different order. However, she herself realizes that her strangeness was not like that of the others. So the world became psychedelic, and she started wandering the beach with the hippies without much sense of what she was doing. However, during this period, she begins a relationship with the photographer. And this relationship was a substitute function, not for love, but for being the man who photographed her, she used to say. Things got much worse when this relationship, of course, broke up, because this function was a little bit like the function of stabilization of this case, okay? Soon after this rupture comes an event that shows its relationship with the body. She remembers, she told me, a mystical experience that particularly impressed her. Right in the hippie era, she was invited here in Bahia to attend a lecture by an esoteric guru. As she listened to the lecture, everything, as the moment, in the very moment as she was listening this lecture, everything becomes silent. And she had the impression that she no longer belonged to her body. She left the lecture wandering around the city for days, as if she were a soulless body. It's an expression of herself, soulless body. After days wandering, total emptiness in the streets in Bahia, she was found by police and by her family. And what we can see here, and I'll talk this later, a resemblance to Marguerite Duras' character Laure von Stein. A body in the middle of nowhere, in a silence, with no feelings of body, and an empty, a soulless body, okay? This period also marks a gradual abandonment of tumultuous relationships with partners. The photographer, the case that the affairs that she had with some women and men, partners of both sexes. And she decided from now on, after she broke up to the photographer, before her last partners that I told you in the beginning of this text. So we have 20 years in this. But she starts in this moment to devote herself a platonic love for a famous woman, a singer, very known here. Whenever this singer came through town, to shows, they give concerts, etc., she made a point of visiting her in her dressing room at the theater. And it is, above all, a love, she told me, a love without no need for reciprocity. Thus, his affective and sexual life follows the same destiny that passes from the field of the experience to the field of contemplation. So, the love for this famous singer was a little bit like the woman, the one that she loves, but with no intercourse, no needs to share. And this passion will take her until his death, will last forever. After this episode that we was talking about, that she was soulless, wandering on the city, when she returns to her family home one day, she wakes up in the middle of the night with the feeling that her life will only make sense if she, her expression, meets death. What it's supposed to mean to her, death, I really don't know, but it was like this, means death. She then takes, again, a revolver from the house, goes to a distant spot, and shoots herself. And the rest, trying to kill herself, is an interrogation. Let's see if this or not. She reports that the hours she spent in bed, as a matter of fact, she reports that it was not a desperate gesture. On the contrary, she experienced a mixed feeling of relief and serenity when she realized that despite her injury, she was still able to walk, not touch the heart, for example, and she walks to her bed, lies down, and covered herself up. And she reports that the hours she spent in bed awaiting death were of great peace, waiting for this meeting with the death. She lay there praying, waiting to die peacefully, but she didn't die. The next morning, when she was discovered for her mother, she was taken in serious condition to the hospital. And so it starts at the age of 20, many months, years of treatments, surgery, weeks in ICU, and finally a long, very long, more than 2-3 years, period in psychiatric hospitals. From this critical period of hospitalization and psychiatric consultations comes the contact with art therapy. Finally, she found, because art was not important to her before, she finally comes to with contact with art therapy at the hospital. And from this moment on, she no longer needs to be hospitalized. And gradually, the turmoil of the hospitalizations period is left behind. The role of the arts is crucial in stabilizing the psychosis, but it should not be understood in the sense of a symptom, like last teaching of Lacan. We need to separate these things. Not every art are symptom, but can be a suppliance. And this is very important, because here you can show the difference between suppliance and symptom. It's not the same thing. But in this case, in her case, it was very, very important to understand that when she starts to thinking to make art, it coincides with a huge stabilization. She almost left psychiatry world. That is, we found that art fixed a position for Anna in which she makes use of her gaze to reorder the fragments of her body image. Take this phrase because I think that is important. I will repeat. So I think that she makes use of her own gaze, not the gaze of the other, as it was, for example, all the time the other have a evil gaze with her, but now it's different because now it's her own gaze with her art, like a treatment for the body image. It is not, therefore, only a phenomena of creation. The corporal reorganization goes through art as a possibility to outline an extraction of the object A, the gaze. Extraction of this object A, the gaze, that it was impossible to her before. So I will show this better later. Third moment, between two deaths. This is important. It's like in Lacan's ethics seminar. Okay. Anna is in her 40s now. Before she was 20, and has not presented any psychiatric crises reminiscent of the past for a long time. She regularly uses a neuroleptical in minimal dose sometimes, but comes regularly to see me as an analyst, not as a psychiatrist, because I never prescribed her. She occupies her sessions talking about her daily life, her family tensions, her difficulty in asserting herself professionally as an artist. But a contingent encounter will turn her life around in a good way. It was very important because I will talk now about the first relationship that I told you in the beginning of my speech, her last relationship when she was already 40 and very far from the turmoil of the relationships that he had before with the photographer, with the women, etc. It was a social occasion, and she is introduced to a man who had recently become a widower. Very recent, 6 months or a year, not more than this. And a friendship is quickly established in this case. But a key aspect of the relationship is reported to the analyst shortly after the encounter. She told me, this man had been struck by the physical resemblance between Anna and his deceased wife. She heard this, and they begin a relationship that is gradually and cautiously established. It is not a relationship mediated by sexual desire. The company and the taste for art, the travels around the world, is this the most important in this case? Issues related to sexual desire and the pleasure of life as a couple were never subjects in the sections, the analyzed sections. This is how, for the first time after years, Anna could establish a stable relationship with someone, taking the place of the deceased wife, seems to have been something fundamental for this relationship to go forward. Occupy the place of the dead. Fourth moment, a shot in the gaze. A shot in the gaze. It took more than 10 years of treatment for Anna with me to comment on an episode that occurred in her early childhood when she was 4 or 5 years old. She never talked to me before, and to none of the psychiatrists. It wasn't found this in the files in her psychiatry hospital. Even though there is the possibility of it being a mnemic hallucination, a trouble mnemic hallucination. But I'm not sure. I think that it happens because her family told me about this. The account is crucial to situate how the subject organizes her body and use an imaginary identification to defend herself from the intrusion of the jouissance of the other. That's the point that I think that is very important. Now, the souvenir. let's think about what had happened when she was 4 or 5 years. The family was in another room. Anna remembers that she knew of a revolver kept in a closet in her parents' bedroom. She takes the revolver, the gun, and starts playing in front of the mirror. And the gun goes off with a loud bang. She remembers seeing pieces of the mirror shattered, but beyond the fright, what she claims was the most distressing was seeing the image of a girl, very much like her, disfigured in the mirror, in front of her in the mirror. The girl made strange, enigmatic faces at her. And uneasiness is installed between Anna and the image she cannot decipher in front of the mirror. Recounting this scene, even 50 years later, when she talked to me this scene first, Anna was unable to recognize the image that appeared in the broken mirror as her own image. The work in analysis was important for Anna to conclude in one very important analysis session that by shooting herself at the age of 20, she actually wanted to shoot this strange girl who appeared in the mirror. And she told me this phrase, "The mirror now was my body." So we'll see that we have two shots, 4 or 5 years old, 20 years old, but these two moments was never linked by the speech. And in analysis was able to her to, in talking about moment, everybody talks about the moment 2, when she get hospitalized, the hospitalization, etc. But all of this was never linked to the time 1, when she was 4 or 5 years old. And finally, when she was more than 50 years old, she could put in speech, as Lacan used to say, in schizophrenia, we don't have perhaps discourse, but we have speech. They talk. And even when we put these two moments together, we gave to Anna the possibility of talking and make anything with this. So with these 4 moments, I would like to comment about the case. So this is the story. Now I'd like to make some comments about this case. Let's go. We can approach Anna's case based on Miller's considerations about the relation of the uncorp, one body, and the other. Miller, 2007. This relationship is based on the radical alterity between meaning and the real. Meaning and the real, established by Lacan from Seminar 22, RSI. Miller refers to the identification to S1 as being the first Freudian identification. The concept of identification is formalized by Freud in the famous chapter 7 of his text on the psychology of masses. In this text, primordial identification, also called cannibal identification, is in short an incorporation. In German, Einverliebung. That is, primordial identification as being identification to S1 indicates that Einverliebung is a phenomena of the symbolic and not of the imaginary. So the first meaning of the symbolic and the real, this traumatism, shaped anything of the body that is really not what is only trying to shape the body in front of the mirror, as some psychologists used to say. But the paradox of this identification is that, contrary to identification with the unitary trace, einziger Zug, in Germany, which any signifier can be valid to be a unitary trace, if even Hitler mustache, as long as it comes from the field of the other, is the unitary trace comes from the field of the other, but like a trace, not like a meaning, but it's a trace given for the other. The incorporation erases the relation of authority by producing the body itself, a jouissant substance to be modeled by the identifications that will follow. First of all, we have the jouissant substance, and after, with all the identifications that will can come, so there we'll have the body as we see, like ego, for example, okay? So the complex relationship between the body that one has and the body that one is comes from the fact that the imaginary body is linked to the mixture of the real, of jouissance, and the signification obtained from the symbolic, from the castration. So Phallus organized, shape a body. Castration shapes a body. It's the function of trying to organizing this. For Lacan, this operation is produced precisely through the entry of the subject into language, since the incorporation converts the real of the body into a body inhabited by language. That is, following his words, Lacan's, language eats the real. That's the cannibal identification means that language eats the real and it's transforming this little by little. This operation, however, leaves a reminder that finds a logical consistency when the subject manages to make it his object A. So it is a kind of operation that leaves a rest. And nothing guarantees that an incorporation has given Anna a body. Here, we refer to Miller's comments about Laufenstein present in the lessons of his course, The Uses of the Lapse. Just as, and I think the cartel that I have with, I see that Beth Rogers is here, Robert Buck also, because we are now actually studying this in our cartel. Some kind of resemblance between this case and resemblance and distinctions between Low's case and Anna's case. Just as in Low's story, the gap between the first and the second shot produces an eternal instant, which is not inscribed in time by the signifier chain, the chain of signifiers, because time needs the signifier chain to have time as 1, as 2, as 3. But now we have a lack of time because he is an eternal stunt among these two shots, 5 years old and 20 years old. And it does not subjective jouissance as the jouissance of her own body in this case. She lacks precisely the dimension of the phallus and castration. For that, in this sense, we can apply the mathemes that Millet used to describe in the low case. Let me try to put here for you. I think that I can put for you here. Yeah, I'll put here like this. Wait a minute. How can I? Okay, I think that here is okay, like this. So here we see where the image should cover the narcissistic jouissance of the subject, wrapper, envelope, I, parenthesis A, it's what it is. The image becomes the very being of the subject, concealing a void. So image and subject are equal, and it covers the emptiness. We can also evoke the passage from, I think that you know, everybody here know, the passage from Maupassant's Orla, in which the character wakes up and does not identify his image in the mirror, in front of the mirror. It was a very terrifying moment of this count, of Orla's count, is the moment that one day she looks at the mirror and this personage, and Orla didn't recognize himself in front of the mirror. The first shot in the mirror obeys a structure that could well be that of a trigger, psychosis trigger. But the curious thing is that it is not at this moment, but at the beginning of adulthood that the psychosis breaks out. It is at 17 that, in a brutal way, the connection between the living body and its image in the mirror is broken. You see? The mirror image shattered becomes unable to maintain the location of jouissance in the field of the other. The real appears in the mirror without any phallic mediation. In this moment of anguish, the body loses its envelope, in Anna's case, promoting the eruption of the dysmorphophobic element. The dysmorphophobic element is the grimaces, the bizarre image that she starts seeing in the image after the mirror. After, yes, in the other side of the mirror, you can do this. In the other side of the mirror, to us, we'll find us. But to Anna, in the other side of the mirror, she'll find the real. Mirror is not sufficient to give back an image and a being to Anna, not anymore. These, at first, are perceived as an enigma, but then, the grimaces, but then become a sign that the other has some evil intention over her. These grimaces of this young girl. And this feeling accompanies her all her life, turning her relationship with the little others into something hellish, because it was, as I start talking to you, in permanence, the gaze of the colleagues, the gaze was not too easy for her. However, it is not at this moment that Anna triggers her psychosis. even if she could be bizarre, a little bit strange, but nobody could say that she was mad until the latest years of the teenager. After the first shot, it was still possible to keep a distance from this double that, like Orla, is so intimate and so strange. In the same way, disorder in the mirror is something that fascinates and causes horror. Distancing from the double prevents an encounter with this enigmatic void that the mirror has ceased to conceal. Thus, it is precisely at the moment of the encountering of sex, the encounter of this seduced by this older woman, the meeting of two real bodies in sexual intercourse in the form of a relationship with a figure of the double, a woman, that the crossing of the image and the threatening encounter take place. And now the psychosis is triggered. So we know that she was able to fix the word bizarre, but when the body experience of the sex appeared, it was too much. And this experience was beyond the phallus, completely outside the phallus champ, the phallus field. Under transference, the memory of the first shot brings a meaning to the second shot, and Anna elaborates how to know in analysis that the second shot was a moment of completion. And it's a phrase that she told me. I actually wanted to shoot in the mirror when I shot myself, exclaims Anna in a capital session. That is, in the suicidal act of the second shot, the true dimension, it was the murder of her double and not to kill herself. It was not really a suicide. It posed to us a question that is very important. Who we kill when we kill ourselves? Because it's impossible. If we don't have the representation of our own death, Freud used to say that it's impossible to figure out our own death. Who we kill when we kill ourselves? This is a point that I think that is very important. That is, in suicide act, the second shot in the true dimension is of the murder of her double. Here, too, we can evoke the similarity with the final solution proposed by Maupassant's character in Orla. Remember the final, the finale of Maupassant. While the passage à l'acte, the second shot, only precipitated the anguish and increased the hallucinatory picture, after 2 decades, the possibility of inscribing his suicide attempt in analysis as an answer to the enigma of the first shot brought an unprecedented appeasement to the subject. Such a formulation would hardly be valued outside of an analytic context. This kind of stories are not usually of much interest to psychiatry. Psychiatrists don't like to figure out the importance of this kind of stories. It is up to the psychoanalysis to know how to deal with these rests of history that do not speak of the symptom, but of the symptom. It is important to come back to the point that a significant improvement was obtained well before this phase of the treatment, when, still hospitalized, Anna discovered art through art therapy sessions in the psychiatric ward. What is the effective role of art in her stabilization? What's the role of art in this case? The search for a job linked to the arts may, at first, suggest that the work of art appears as a substitute in this case. The formula, however, seems different to me. That's the reason that I think I was talking to Beth, I remember some months ago, that art is not open to all treatment of psychosis. It's not like this. We need to have clinic and art. Only in the cases that some artists trying to meet art and nobody asking to go to a psychiatrist or a psychoanalyst. I don't know. So despite the great improvement, I think that of her clinical condition after the approach with us, the suffering narrated in analysis was still very important. The fact that she, at the age of 20s, met the art was not sufficient to appease this strangeness and this suffering. The encounter with the partner at the beginning of the relation, the relationship reinforced on the first part. The encounter with the partner at the beginning of the relationship reinforced the position of observer of the arts and the world. However, this latest part, very older, I think that he was 20 years older than Anna. A stroke from her partner gradually caused her life to become mortified again, away from the social bounds. Not without difficulty, it takes some months in analysis, she then decides to leave him in order to stay alive. And lives again with more lightness, and the complaints diminish a lot. Another answer to the question about the role of art in the organization, both of her body and in the symptomatization of her delusional psychosis, emerges. One day, so I'll talk about Rodin's Gate, at length about her particular interest in Rodin's Gate. This work of art, which fascinates her, refers directly to the shattered mirror of her childhood, she told me, which is surrounded by a frame. Thus, by becoming interested in the beauty of the frame of this portal, which circumscribes the gates of death, and reconstructs the frame as a framing of the thing, das Ding, revealed by the fragmentation of the mirror. This strategy allows her to divert her gaze from the jouissance that can bring her to madness. What allowed Anna not to get lost in schizophrenia? To answer, let's return to Lacan. The schizophrenic does not use any established discourse to be able to give jouissance function to his body. As Eric Laurent says, since the schizophrenic has his object A in his pocket, he cannot use the drive to organize bodily jouissance, because you have to keep object outside to make the drive goes and return. It's not possible. In listening to schizophrenics, we often observe the fabrication of strange organs that fix jouissance in the absence of the extraction of an object that promotes the pulsional circuit. In many cases, there is in the conviction that devices have been implanted in the body, some kind of device. You used to hear this from schizophrenics, or the adoption of an external objects that assume the value of an organ for the subject, for example. But in Anna's case, the object gaze, not extracted, returned in the real, fixing her under the gaze of the persecuting other. The strategy during the years of treatment was to construct a frame with which she could defend herself from the real by fixing jouissance on this artifact, look, this invention, just as Rodin did. Transferring the beautiful into the frame makes the frame a work of art and not simply a support for the image. The frame becomes a sculpture in Rodin's that allows organizing the scopic jouissance, which before was set adrift in this proximity of the thing. So it's very interesting because art is important, but it's a little bit like when we live very peacefully with a tiger. We both are cool, but we just need to spend all the time looking for the tiger. It's okay. The tiger is dead. It's okay. But we need to know how to deal with the tiger. And it's a little bit what art is to Anna. Yes, it's important, the art, but she needs to take care about the thing and the jouissance that art may discover to her. So Anna creates art to support her gaze. Looking into the mirror, however, refers directly to the real. The study of the Tom's portal of Rodin's allows her to symptomatize an envelope for her shattered image, as we see in Low's case. The image is contained by a border that presents it from falling into the abyss. To stay alive, Anna cannot separate herself from her gaze. I'm closing to end here. Recently, a situation put the device she created, these devices, to the test. While walking down the streets one day, she was mugged, and besides having her belongings taken, she suffered several abrasions from the thieves. It was very complicated. And a few weeks later, she brings me a sequence of drawings that narrate the difficult moment that happens to her. 3 of them, of these drawings, particularly call my attention. The first, in which she depicts the scene of the robbery, is very interesting because she associates the figure of the aggressors with the aggressions of her psychiatric hospitalization. And thus she replaces the guns with restraint strips and syringes of medication. I will show you this draft. Wait a minute. Okay, here. Here. So you can see here is written nightmare, persecution, God have mercy. And we see Anna and the thieves, but you can see here that is the strips and the strings of her time in the hospital that is important. You see, it's a very interesting case. and she put this in the drum. This is very interesting. But the most interesting, wait a minute. In the second drawing, Anna brings what she herself calls the result of years of analysis. A reconciliation with the maternal order is possible, expressing in a draw where mother and daughter form a single image. But at the same time, they point to us, they point to a movement of separation. The two women are dressed alike, giving the impression that from one image emerged the specular other. Unlike her own image, this figure after the shot in childhood, the mirror image detaches itself from the aggressor other and becomes an image of consolation. And this is very important as an image because you can see how difficult it is to wait a minute here, to separate how the other was so close to her, how difficult it was to her to make a separation. So this is the draw here. This is the draw. Amazing. Mother and daughter, and looks how difficult it was to her to split her body from the body of the other. So you can see how complicated it was to her in this kind of cases, how complicated it was to bear this all night long. It was really impossible. If you have the other, it's like the tiger. You need all the time to be there trying to fix where the gaze of the other is. So we have the third draw that is really very interesting because it's the moment that she calls healing. The moment she calls healing allows her to see the other side of the frame. We then have the construction of a sequence. One, the shattered mirror and the rupture of the image. Two, the shot in her own body as an attempt to eliminate the other, the second shot. Three, the discovery of art and the invention of the gaze. Four, the identification with the dead, like the wife in the portrait, that gives her a point to be looked at by the other, but as dead, the place of the dead. And finally, the construction of the frame, which sustains the gaze through the study of Hell's Gate. Finally, healing appears in this drawing for Anna as a possibility to look through the frame. The image is no longer threatening as in childhood, not opaque or mortified, as is in the previous solution. An image emerges that she reports as one of happiness, her body erect, seemed to want to get up and out of the dead position. She can finally conceive of something on the other side of the frame without feeling threatened. Is this? Wait a minute. Where is Zoom? Oh, here. Here it is. So you can see you have the frame for the first time with some kind of it's not a paradise, but you see the sun. It's not a hell that is in the other side of the frame. We have music here. She's awakened. So here it seems to me that here Anna found a solution to her at age of 55, 56 years old. This is what is solution. But solutions in psychoanalysis has nothing to do with happy ending. They are only solutions. So here we come to the most disturbing point in Anna's case. What for her was really a cure? Shortly after this drawing, Anna opts for the death. She jumps out of the window of her apartment. We will never be able, even as analysts, to have a full understanding of an act like a suicide. However, my years of living with Anna allow me to assume that it was not an act of desperation, but a calculated act, and an elaborate solution to radically separate herself from the gaze that haunted her since childhood. I'm closing to end, and I would like to finish the case of Anna, letting Anna the word. So now Anna will talk by herself, because Anna is in my film, Madness Among Us. And now it's Anna who will talk to us a little bit about her art and about what she was feeling. And this was made 3-4 weeks before her decision. So I'll put here for you, okay?
Yeah. Marcelo, is that film in the YouTube? Can we see the film?
Yes, because I will put to you with less English subtitles. I will put here.
Yeah, but maybe we can put the YouTube, the link on the chat, so everybody.
After I put the film.
After, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because I selected some scenes that I will talk about.
Perfect, yeah.
Oh, let me. I've already put here. Let me just put here. Okay. Okay. But I need to do this. Wait a minute. I need to put the sound, so I'm very close. And the subtitles in English. Okay. Now zoom. I will show to you 2 little pieces of the film. One is Anna showing her art to a very famous marchand of art, Naif, here in Bahia. And after, I'll put another one.
É um trabalho que eu aprecio, o meu. É de 98. É mulher nua e reflexiva.
Esse é um autorretrato?
Mas sim, não. Tudo começou com esse olhar. Aí eu dei o título, Mulher Nua.
Mas é praticamente, não diria que é sempre a mesma mulher, mas existe quase um biotipo que é sempre o mesmo, não é isso?
E esse aqui eu gosto muito em termos de expressividade. Esse é de 2003.
Sim.
Eu gosto muito. Muito mesmo. Tem nada perfeitinho aí, nada bonitinho, narizinho, boquinha, olhinho. Tem nada perfeitinho, mas é expressivo, você entende? A força do olhar também, novamente aí, não é, Dimitri?
É um tema que você repete com uma certa frequência, a importância do olho, do seu trabalho.
Eu gosto muito. Esse é de 93, guache, se chama O Olho de Deus. O que você achou, seu Dimitri?
mais recentes não tem muita coisa, não é?
Não, mais recente tem pouca coisa.
2013 você não tem nada.
2013 eu exercitei algumas coisas, mas mais assim, associadas ao meu momento de crise assim, depressiva, entende?
Sim, mas isso também pode ser interessante como uma expressão. Acho que você devia trabalhar mais, viu?
Não, meu projeto é
90...
recomeçar, entendeu? Recomeçar.
And I'll put the last
Eu já imagino, às vezes, tem câmaras na minha casa, assim, no banheiro, na cozinha, no quarto. Sabe aquela coisa de ser vigiado, de estar sendo vigiado? Então, isso aí, para entrar numa paranoia daqui para ali, né? Tenho essa sensação em mim de que o que as pessoas, o que a sociedade, o que o mundo, a minha passagem aqui na Terra ambiciona é me trancafiar. Me botar presa, você entende? Me impedir de ser, de viver, de realizar. Acho que é por isso que vem a paranoia, o medo, sei lá, não sei não. Eu acho que se eu não andar muito na linha, se eu vacilar, é como se as pessoas soubessem que eu tenho essa fragilidade psicológica. Então, às vezes, eu estou assim, num canto, e eu vejo 2, 3 pessoas ali falando, e às vezes olhando para mim assim, eu já tenho a impressão que está falando de mim, entendeu? E falando negativamente. Aí eu já entro em pânico, entendeu? Então essas coisas detonam. Eu não gosto de mim quando eu estou só com a cabeça lá em cima, alucinada, felicíssima, achando tudo maravilhoso. Eu não gosto de mim assim, porque é um desequilíbrio também. Eu reconheço isso em mim. Eu gosto quando eu estou assim, ó, plantada e olhando para o alto, fazendo projetos. Quando eu começo a refazer projetos na minha vida, é que eu sinto que eu estou melhorando, entendeu, Fernandinho?
So Anna talks by herself, and to conclude, I conclude my speech with a memory of the time when I was the general director of the largest psychiatric hospital here in Bahia, Juliano Moreira. One day, we were building a square with gardens for the patients here. However, when it came time to execute the project, we discovered that there was an old rusty, almost 1-ton machine lying in the middle of the projected garden. Huge. Initially, it was frustrating for the team to see the new garden interrupted by such a clutter. Numerous attempts to remove it were futile, impossible, as the favela around the hospital made it impossible for a crane to arrive to pick it out. But it was at this point that a patient who had been in the hospital for several years approached me and suggested a solution very much in tune with Lacanian theory. The old machine was, this is this patient, the creation is a suggestion of this patient. The old machine, plus the machine, was painted in bright colors, elevated to the dignity of a piece of art, And then we've put a small plate of it that reads, we can read, the impossible to remove. Familiarly, for the institution, it came to be called the impossible. Oh, let's go around walk around the impossible. The impossible was there. The thing converted into a work of art accompanied the team for the entire time of my management as a director of the psychiatric hospital. I spent many years without returning to this hospital after leaving my position. And during this time, the rains, the bad weather, degraded and rusted again the impossible. Many years later, when I visited the hospital, I found that the impossible could be still in the same place. The thing was there, was again rusted. It had lost its status of work of art, not anymore. It reminded me more of a frog lying on the grass, contemplating the tumult, the turmoil of the overcrowded psychiatry wards. And at the moment, when I see this, an idea crossed my mind. Discourses cross institutions without ever being confused, mixed with them. On the horizon of any totalitarian discourse, pretension, the impossible remains. That is why I call my colleagues, you, who do not retreat and face the difficult cases of psychiatrists with the affectionate name, I call you professionals of the impossible. And to finish, I would like to show you this pic. The impossible to be removed. This is what we do with Lacanian clinics phase of what we do. Oh, thank you. Is this?
Wow, Marcelo, amazing. Thank you so much, really. Well, every time is amazing. Every time I hear you, your work, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So I have some question, but if somebody wants to, to ask question, raise your hand or put the questions. Okay. Anka, I think is the first one.
I feel very lucky that we have the chance to have this kind of event, and it is indeed, as you said earlier on, new good things have become possible in this world that we are getting used to. So I think this is quite wonderful. I have a comment and a question. The comment is that I felt really struck by the way in which she chose to encounter death the second time, because she walked through a frame. She walked in the frame. It's not like shooting, it's different. And every window has a frame. She stepped through it. To me, that's quite extraordinary. I wonder whether you have any thoughts on that. But my question is, how did she come to analysis? How did she discover analysis? And at what point in her life that happened?
She discovered, I had the chance that, because some of you know, I think that is in my very, very past, is that first of all, when I was a young doctor, I was a heart surgeon. I worked with heart surgery. And even when I was not yet, because all this was in the University Hospital of Bahia when I was a young student of heart surgery. And the first time I met Anna was intensive care, and I was one of the students that was in this intensive unit as a young doctor. And there was a friend of mine that was the resident psychiatry of the case. As you could see, Leonor, even at his 50s, it was a wonderful woman, beautiful woman. You can figure out at the age of 20s, she was a muse, the voice. So everybody was a little bit, has fallen a little bit in love with the case and desperate, trying to understand why she decided to put end in his life, in her life. So this is what the first. What happens in this very moment? I was I was in analysis, and it was difficult to me to know if I could still be trying to become a heart surgeon or a psychiatrist. My analysis, and one day I decided to go to psychiatrist. And in 1988, 87, 88, I had a chance to go to Paris to learn psychoanalysis in Paris. But I was already doctor of the university hospital, where Anna, after all things in intensive care, spent through 2 or 3 years in the same hospital, but in psychiatry consultations. But she had the chance to have a psychiatrist that always was very interested for Lacan's teaching. When I come back when I come back from Paris, 1994, I came back not as a heart surgeon anymore, but as a psychiatrist of this hospital. And it was the end of the functions of my colleague, that she was leaving leaving the post. So she asked me if I would like to take care of this patient. So Anna starts with me in the hospital as a psychiatric patient. But soon, very, very soon, she decided to start with me in my own cabinet, my own office, a psychoanalysis. She used to live in a very glamorous but intellectual world. She had lots of friends, intellectuals, from art. So psychoanalysis in the world where Anna used to live, it was a thing very, very no talking about. So when one day she asked me, I would like to make a psychoanalysis with you. Okay, so let's go. And she spent with me almost 20 years with me until his death. And I don't have it here because I'm not with all the, you know, that Brazil now is a mess with the COVID. It's the awful place in the world now is here. So I'm not able to go to my office to work. I'm working here at home because the last picture that Anna made, she gave it to me. And I had it in my office. It was her cat, whose name was Maria Jasmine. And after now, I realized that when she gave to me this cat, that she was the only being at home with her, she was perhaps talking to me, take care of Maria Jasmine because I'm leaving. It's okay to me, and she's leaving.
Wow, thank you.
Okay, Andrea Ferro, you can unmute.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? I
Okay.
don't speak English very well because I'm from Brazil, and I cannot put my camera on for some reason, maybe connection. I would like to ask a question to Marcelo Veras. Do you think there may also have been a small twist in the case when Anna found a partner who located her with the image of her dead ex-partner, which means he situated her more as a mortified object being looked at. And the look, object, olhar, look, is very important to this patient. And this partner situated her more as a mortified object being looked at, when before the first partner and the psychoanalyst, who both had interest in art and photography, situated Anna much more as a subject, alive, a person who can look, can contemplate her life, look with her body straight up out the window. And with that, I want to highlight the importance of the partner, like as a mediator of the object look, as a mediator of the object olhar. Moderators of this object that can be circumscribed at certain times, and at other times can be invading her from outside with the cameras, the paranoia, the mirror, the double. And what do you think about this? If I could make myself being understood, I don't know.
Thank you, Andrea. The object, olhar, in English, object, gaze. Gaze talvez seja melhor que olhar. The gaze, I think that Anna, in 50 years, she's a kind of map of what we can do avec the object when we don't have Phallus as moderation. Because we have lots of essays, tentativas, lots of essays to bear what's happened when we don't have when we have the mediation of the Phallus. That's the reason that I was talking that the meeting of this older man that fixed that in the place of the dead woman, it was not a passion, it was not love, it was a structure that for some years worked good. It was good, but it was not a wonderful solution. And I knew this. In her art, because I think that you have heard the Marchand, Gazalevsky, talking about the importance of the gaze, the olhar, the importance of the gaze in her art. And it was really because what frightens is the eye of God. It's one of the eye of God is the eye of the other. And what's happened when I'm painting the gaze, I'm painting the eye outside. I'm making a kind of extraction, a fiction of extraction, a solution to the gaze too close to me, like the draft with her mother. So when we're able to put the gaze, even the eye, like an organ of jouissance in the art, it was to her like a separation. Art to her was her own, her best possibility to split this intrusion, this presence of the other. So is this. It works okay for a time, with this last partner. But in the last 3-4 years, it was very difficult to her because he was mortified also, because he had a stroke, he was in the bed, and it was complicated. But it was difficult because it was, we need to think that, I think in psychology, in psychoanalysis, in clinical, we need to think almost always that ethics is present for everybody. And even if she had problems, symptoms, complications, to her, to leave this man, to let this man away, it was an ethic problem, a problem of ethic. It was very difficult to her. But a moment, it was important to do this. It was really important. I don't know if you know the film, Andrea, because the whole film, you can see the whole film is about this. A Loucura Entre Nós.
Thank you, Marcelo and Andrea. Yeah, I think to see the film will be very good. Yeah, we'll send the link. No, it's important.
Can I ask something? Could the making of the film have had an impact on her, because a camera or a public that looks at her and her life, can that have done something that had an influence?
Yes, this is the question, the very important question, because this doc, when it starts, Anna, it was start not about Anna. It's about a psychiatric hospital and solutions that women can do, etc. And the director, Fernanda Varrey, who lives now in Paris, in the first months, Anna wasn't very interested in being part of this documentary. She was there, but was not, it was okay. But when she starts to be in front of the camera, she was she gave to us all that she could give. I didn't tell to the director what could happen or not, because we can think about this. And for all the moment of almost all the moment of the film, it was very important to talk. But I think that it was now a little bit like a will, a testament. It was because why in the beginning of the film, Anna was in the same project, this project, Criamundo, the project of the subject of the doc, and I invited her to go to this project because I knew that she was too close to the end. And it was a solution. But for example, when I heard of her death, I was in Paris in our Congress, World Psychoanalysis Congress. I think that it was the last in Paris, 6 years ago, I don't remember. And I was there, and I was sad because I lost a friend, but no surprise, because I knew that one day it will happen. You see the draw. The draw, happiness. No, the draw is window. The painting shows a window. Happiness is not what is not in a religious meaning that when we see the draw, the happiness in the other side of the wall of the window, one can think like this, but it was not me. I understood with this draw that happiness is not be in this world with the gaze of the other forever. It's okay to me. It's all done. It was a decision. That's I think that it was a kind of suicide, that it was not at all by despair, anguish, not of this. Analysis gave to her 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
In a very severe case.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Marcelo, my question is, when you mentioned that family is good to, well, what she said, no? That the family is good to see in picture, but everyday life is complicated, no? You mentioned, it has to do with Anka, no? A comment, that it was easier to frame in a picture, no? That the word of contemplation is much better than the word of intersubjectivity, no? And then, yeah, because also when you started at the beginning, no, there is a moment that you said that that she, well, that she was looking like to feel, not to feel excluded from the feel of the other, no? Yeah, is to so my question is also, because many neurotics also, commit suicide. Many neurotic also, are looking for this place in the other.
Yeah.
No? Many neurotic also prefer to be framing a picture, no? So, and I know that you have talked a lot about the beyond the phallus, no? The phallus would be like the difference, no? That the subjective. But my question is, because sometimes a neurotic can have like episodes, a psychotic episode, no? Without having the structure, no? So
it's not a vaccine that works forever.
Okay, that's good answer. So yeah, so the phallus would be the thing that help save us, no? Maybe.
Save us, and it's a condemnation, because when we go to analysis and we think to enter in psychoanalysis, is because when you go there, it's to be free of the phallus a little bit, because the phallus in women, men and women, it's still in the field of the fantasy, and perhaps be having a happy end with the fantasy was the purpose of the first passes. You say passes? Passes?
Yeah, the pass, yeah.
You say pass. So was the purpose of the first passes in Lacan's theory school. But now we go beyond the fantasy. Fantasy is not the happy end of the phallus in analysis, because we need to go to the one, the jouissance of the one. And when we go there, we got like a plus, a bonus track, the liberation from the fantasy a little bit, but we know that fantasy still remains. But it's like this. In case of Anna, it's a little bit different, because the only way to bear the sex, the body, was a fantasy, like a delusion, very, very straight. A little bit like when we talk about fantasy in Schreber's case. We don't have the mobility, because it's not a fantasy with the mediation of the desire of the other, but with the presence of the other. So it's the same thing, but in the other side, in the bad side. It's more complicated to her.
Yeah, thank you. Marina, next.
Hello, thank you very much for this presentation. It was amazing. I would like to ask you some details about Anna's father. and if there was a foreclosure of the name of the father. When do you think the triggering occurred? And as I observed the documentary, I checked that she was talking about the cameras, how regarding the gaze, that the cameras are always everywhere, and that she was gazed. She seemed that the gaze is something intolerable to her. When she was showing the paintings to the man, to the other one, he said, this woman has the same expression, and the other one the same expression, like each figure had the same expression. Do you think that her project could help her? Because if the project could help her, would she jump out of the window? Would she pass would she pass to the act? Thank you.
I think that the question of the passage à l'acte, you remember what Sartre used to say, Sartre and Camus, is the only big problem is that in the suicide. The only big question that we have is the suicide. Suicide, I think that to us, is a word that we can use in different ways of meaning, because it's a word, a signifier. And we can put suicide in the metaphor. So I can, for example, if I'm organizing a big date with a big woman, wonderful woman, and me, myself, I boycott, I cut this. I don't know why my unconscious made me forgiven this. And I can say, oh, I committed suicide. I need to be dead and I'm not. So suicide, it's a word that we may decline this in several metaphors. That's a bar amid suicide and the act. The problem with the act, the very act, the real act, the passage à l'acte, is that we don't have the bar and the metaphor over. It's not like this that it works, because the perfect passage à l'acte, it's not, we cannot explain. If you can explain, it's already not anymore a passage à l'acte, because passage à l'acte has always the real. So passage à l'acte, to me, to you, when we talk about the Anna's passage à l'acte, is in theory, because we're talking, it's a more a word that we're talking in metaphor, but to the subject in front of a window, it can be two things: a way to get out of the desire of the other, and it's not a psychosis in this case, because the desire of the other, even if, but in general, is when the desire of the other is not sufficient anymore to give us anguish. Because when we read seminar 10, we know that anguish is one of the ways to avoid the passage à l'acte. That's the reason that I don't know if it's a good solution, fulfill the patients with drugs only when he's thinking about death, killing themselves, because I don't think that it's possible to treat this, the problem of the other, the desire of the other, only with drugs. Treat real with more real. Perhaps why? Because in general, drugs relieve the anguish and the pain. And it's exactly when the pain and the anguish relieves, the subject jump through the window. That's I know that somebody here is from London, and that was the big scandal in England some years ago, that the psychiatrists start giving antidepressants to boys, to young children, 10 years old. And what they could see, it was lots of 10, 11, 12 years old girls and boys committing suicide. So they stopped to do this because the drug, it seems good because block the anguish, but anguish is already a wall, a barrier, anything. You know, I don't remember the name in English, empêchement, blocks the act. We think, oh, he was so anguished that he jumped up. No, anguish blocked the act in general. We can see this in seminar 10.
Yeah. And then the father, Marcelo, the father of Anna.
The father of Hannah, let me tell you about the father of Hannah. He was very important to her, very good to her. She loved her father. The only thing that it was not possible, like a contingency, to transmit, to pass the name of the father, because it's not, sometimes it's not the responsibility is not of the father. When we know that the name of the father sometimes doesn't work, doesn't mean that is the father is the guilt. We used to think about this because Lacan talks a lot about, Freud talks a lot about Schreber's father. But in this case, of course, I think that Schreber's father was mad. But not in this case. In this case, I don't think. I think that from one moment, she was in front of her A comma, A and A comma, in the diagonal of the imaginary L scheme, when you see L scheme, A and A comma, with the shot, A and A comma, broke up and was never reconciliated again. Psychosis didn't start with all. Yes, in a certain way, we can use. You can say that in this moment, psychosis was triggered, but not with all the symptoms, hallucinations, because quickly he learns how to avoid the center of the image, the mirror of the other. When the jouissance of the body, the different jouissance of the body are not in the moment, in the case, it's more easier. That's the reason that I think that to her, the most difficult part was when she finally crossed the barrier, the wall of the bodies. It was too much to her. Because when we gave our body to the other, we gave our body, and to her, the big problem was how to keep her body with no mediation of the castration. Castration allows us to pass the jouissance to the field of the other. What is castration? Look, the field of the other. To go there and try to recuperate. But in psychosis, the jouissance of the other and the body of Anna was already too close, as the draw shows.
I have a question. Thank you, Marcelo. I was struck when you were describing, I guess it was the second shot, the suicide. When she shot herself, I think you said in the breast, and then simply walked home and lay in bed waiting for death peacefully.
Peacefully.
Peacefully, not in a state of anguish and not in a state, it seems, of physical pain either. And I'm wondering how she could not be in physical pain with a bullet through her body, and whether it was in fact because it was not herself whom she shot. It was.
It's a very good question, because we never know what is our own body. And you see, I think it's a theory. I think that she was so peacefully laying down in the bed as when she decided to jump out the window. I think that it was when I think about Anna's case, her voice, we talk a lot because it was very interesting to talk to her. So when she came to my office, sometimes we spent 40 minutes, 50 minutes talking about art, about cinema. She loved Agnès Varda, French cinema. She was very cultivated. So it was good. It was a good moment of my week when she appears to talk about this. And always knowing about this complicated way of being in the world. But transference was very, very good. She used to be very safe in my office. And of course, perhaps, only we are in the field of the perhaps, if I was in Salvador in this moment, I could spare this anguish or this act or this conclusion. I never know. But it was a moment that I spent 1 or 2 months in Paris. I wasn't there. And she didn't like to WhatsApp, to send messages, nothing like this. It was not her thing. So perhaps we had, for example, I don't remember when, I think that in general, the meetings in World Association is in April. So perhaps last time I saw her was in March, and I should give to her an appointment in June, because it wasn't this very close, but never knows. This is the tough point of this case, because we are only wondering things, and it's impossible. And there's a reason that I told you that we are professionals of the impossible, because it includes not knowing part of the act that we are responsible. I'm not taking out my responsibility of this case, but anything in this case is opaque, is impossible.
Yeah.
Did you take care of her cat?
Not, but her
Of the
sister.
picture of the cat.
I take care of the picture.
The painting.
Unfortunately, it's not here, but I take care of the picture because it's not a problem of beauty. It's not a beautiful drawing, but makes me remember Anna in my office.
Yeah, about the impossible.
Anything like the impossible. I need to say, you know, we're close to finish this case. It's very, very important to my analysis. And one day, perhaps in my past, I will show to you how this connects to my own story. Because me too, the solution that I found to in my analysis was to become a psychoanalyst and photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And I have books of photography too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my parents, I grew up with my parents, mother and father, in TV.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mother she presents a show in TV, and the moment very interesting when I was young was to see my mother on the screen. It's an Oedipus that passes by the screen.
Yeah, 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 yeah. This is amazing. It's a un banquete, a banquet. I don't know, in banquet in English. Thank you, Marcelo. Yeah, unfortunately, we need to finish. But I wanted to thank you and to thank you all. It was really an amazing work, Marcelo. And well, from Initiative Toronto, I thank you, everyone. And then in April, we're not going to have a guest speaker, but in May, we're going to have Veronique Borus. And I still don't know the title, but I have already the next speakers for the next trimester, and I'm very happy. Yeah, this is a passion, psychoanalysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Very
Bye.
nice.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.